Picture a building 7 stories tall on a street so narrow that the neighbours on the opposite side can hear your children crying through the wall. Now fill it with 350 people. Add 1 toilet per floor shared between 8 families. Add a single cold water tap in the hallway. No hot water, no pressure to speak of. A trickle at best on Saturdays when every floor wants it at the same time. Add the smell of boiling cabbage and wet coal, and something that used to be a fish 2 days ago. Add children in every room, babies in every corner. A man with tuberculosis coughing through the wall at 3 in the morning. That's a Lower East Side tenement in 1895, home to 400,000 people packed into a square mile of Manhattan, the most densely populated neighborhood on the surface of the earth. A place where you could watch a man be born and a man be buried and a man be robbed and a man fall in love, all on the same Tuesday afternoon on the same block, without taking a single step. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists looking at black and white photographs in a museum, not as researchers reading the settlement house reports filed by women in clean dresses who visited on Wednesday afternoons and left before dark. We're living it. One day, one Saturday. Everything you would have seen, smelled, touched and survived. Because Saturday in a tenement is bath day. And bath day is not what you think it is. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I don't know if you're listening because you want to fall asleep or because some part of you needs to understand how people actually lived. The real physical weight of a life without running hot water, without a bathroom with a door that locks, without even the word privacy meaning what it means to you now. Either way, get comfortable, turn off the light, here we go. Your eyes open in the dark and the first thing that hits you, before the cold, before the sound, before anything else, is the smell. It's always the smell, not one smell. Never is. There's the night bucket first, the one sitting in the corner of the room, because you don't go down 3 flights of stairs in the middle of winter to use the hallway toilet, not at 3 in the morning, not alone, not in this building. The bucket has been in use since Thursday. You keep meaning to empty it sooner. You keep not getting around to it. Underneath that, coal smoke, threading up through the floorboards from the family below, who keep their stove burning through the night because they have a newborn. And a newborn needs warmth more than they need 50 cents worth of coal a week. The smoke seeps into everything. Your hair smells of it. The blanket smells of it. The bread you put out last night before you went to sleep already tastes slightly of it. Then the cabbage. There's always cabbage. Someone on this floor eats cabbage every day, morning, noon, and night. And the smell has become permanent. It has soaked into the walls. It is part of the architecture now. When they tear this building down in 30 years, which they will, the rubble will smell of cabbage. And underneath all of it, the smell you've stopped noticing because you've been smelling it for 2 years, but which hits you fresh every morning anyway. The smell of 108 people living in a space designed, if you're being generous, for maybe 40. The smell of bodies and breath and laundry that never fully dries and cooking and work and the particular damp that comes from washing floors with water that has nowhere to drain properly, including you. You're part of that smell. You know it. You try not to think about it. Welcome to 97 Orchard Street, Lower East Side, Manhattan, New York City, in the winter of 1895. You're lying on a straw mattress on the floor of a room that is roughly 12 feet wide and 14 feet long. That's the whole room. Not your portion of the room. The whole room. In this room there is the mattress you're lying on, shared with your sister Rivka, who is 11 and takes up more space than her size suggests. A second mattress against the far wall where your parents sleep. A wooden crate that functions as a table. A single chair. The stove. The window. One window facing the air shaft, which means it faces the window of the apartment directly opposite, 6 feet away, which means you have never once had privacy in this room in the 2 years you've lived here. Your name is Hannah Bloom. You're 16 years old. You came from a village outside Krakow with your family in the autumn of 1893 on a boat that took 12 days and smelled worse than this room, which at the time seemed impossible and in retrospect was completely accurate. You arrived at Ellis Island with a bundle of clothes, a name that the immigration officer wrote down wrong and which you've been correcting ever since, and a letter of introduction to a man named Greenberg on Delancey Street who turned out to have moved to Philadelphia 6 months earlier. You figured it out. Everyone does, or they don't, and if they don't, you don't hear about them again. The church bells from St. Augustine's are ringing. Not close. You're not near St. Augustine's. But sound carries strangely in this neighbourhood, bouncing between the tenement walls, arriving from directions it shouldn't. Those are 6 o'clock bells, maybe 6:30. Saturday. You've been awake for a few minutes already, lying there in the dark with the smell settling around you, listening to the building come alive. It does this every morning, slowly and then all at once. First the baby downstairs, then the man in the apartment above who walks with a limp and whose dragging step crosses the ceiling like a metronome. Then voices, plural, getting louder floor by floor, and the sound of the hallway filling up. Footsteps, doors, a woman's voice saying something sharp in Yiddish that you catch half of, and then the particular hollow knock of someone filling a bucket from the hallway tap. Saturday. Bath day. You close your eyes again for exactly 1 more minute, because you know what today is going to cost you in terms of physical labour, and you want to be honest with yourself about that before you start. Here is what taking a bath costs in 1895, if you live in a Lower East Side tenement, not money. Well, money too if you're going to the public baths, but we'll get to that. What it costs you in time and effort and sheer physical work before you can sit in warm water for 10 minutes, which is all you'll get anyway. There is no hot water in this building. There is barely cold water. The tap is in the hallway, 1 tap per floor. The water comes in cold, always cold, even in summer. In winter it comes in barely above freezing, and sometimes doesn't come in at all because the pipes are frozen again, and then you wait. And while you wait, the building gets tenser and tenser, floor by floor, because everyone needs water and no one has it. To take a bath, a real bath, with warm water, you need to heat it yourself. To heat it yourself, you need fuel for the stove. To get fuel for the stove, you need money, or someone to go down to the street to scavenge whatever coal has fallen off a delivery cart, which happens less often than you need it to. To heat enough water to fill anything approaching a bathtub, you need roughly 20 to 30 gallons. 20 to 30 gallons weighs between 160 and 250 pounds. You don't have a bathtub, you have a washtub, the one you use for laundry. It holds maybe 8 gallons. You're going to heat as much as the stove can manage. Pour it in the washtub and get in before it cools. 8 gallons, heated on a tenement coal stove, takes about 40 minutes. You need to carry those 8 gallons up 3 flights of stairs from the hallway tap. 2 gallons at a time, in a bucket that weighs about 4 pounds empty. So 4 trips. Minimum. Each trip is 3 flights down and 3 flights up. That's 6 flights of stairs per trip, times 4 trips, is 24 flights of stairs before you've even started heating the water. The staircase is narrow and dark, and someone has left a broken crate on the second floor landing again. The stairs themselves are worn down in the centre from thousands of feet, slightly concave, slightly slippery. There's no railing on part of the second flight because it pulled away from the wall 2 months ago, and the landlord has not fixed it. The landlord has also not fixed the window on the 4th floor landing that is letting winter air directly into the building, which is why the second floor is always slightly colder than the others. This is what bath day means before you've had breakfast. And you still need to fight for the stove. Your mother is already awake when you sit up. She's always already awake. You've never once in your life seen your mother sleep in, even when she was sick, even when she was so tired her hands shook. She has an internal alarm set somewhere before dawn that has never failed her once in the 2 years since you arrived, possibly in the decades before. She's standing at the stove, which is not much of a stove. It's a coal range, maybe 4 feet wide, with 2 cooking surfaces and a small oven that works intermittently. She's looking at the coal bucket, which is not much of a coal bucket. It holds enough for maybe 2 hours of reasonable heat. "Good," she says when she sees you sitting up. She doesn't say good morning. There's no morning small talk in this apartment. There hasn't been since your father's cough got bad. You're up, get water. You pull on your dress, the grey one, the work one, not the blue one you save for when you go out, which is hanging on the nail by the door like a promise you're making to yourself. And you take the bucket. The hall is already busy. Mrs. Katz from 3B is at the tap, filling her pot for the morning tea. She's a small woman with a permanent expression of mild suspicion, who has lived on this floor for 9 years and regards everyone else as a temporary inconvenience. She nods at you, you nod back. This is the full extent of your relationship. The tap releases its water with the grudging slowness of something that does not enjoy its job. You wait. You fill the bucket. The water is so cold it makes your fingers ache after 30 seconds of holding the bucket underneath it. You carry the bucket back to the room, pour it into the washtub, go back, 4 trips. By the 3rd trip, your shoulder is burning. Here is something they don't tell you when they talk about immigration in the history books, or when they show you the pictures, the physical reality of the water. Not the poverty in the abstract, not the crowding in theory. The actual weight of what a life without running hot water requires from your body. Every drop of clean water in this apartment has been carried upstairs by a human being. Mostly you, occasionally your mother, once in a while your father when his cough was better, and your mother stopped him because she was afraid he'd fall. Every drop of dirty water has to be carried back down and disposed of, either poured down the hallway sink, if the hallway sink isn't backed up, which it usually is on Saturdays, or carried all the way down to the yard. The women in this building are carrying probably 1,000 gallons of water up and down those stairs every week, total, across all floors, all families, 1,000 gallons. That's roughly 8,000 pounds of water every week, carried by hand in iron buckets up narrow stairs with no railing. The women in this building have shoulders like longshoremen. You don't notice it until you see someone from outside, from a better neighbourhood, from a building with running water, and you see how they hold themselves differently. Lighter, unburdened in a way you've stopped expecting to feel. Mrs. Katz, who has been doing this for 9 years, has a permanent list to her left side where the bucket goes, like she's been shaped by it, like the water has worn us down the way a river wears down stone. You're 16. You've been here 2 years. You can feel it starting. By 7 o'clock the water is in the washtub. 8 gallons, cold as the hallway. The coal is heating. Your mother has moved from the stove to the table, where she's doing what she does on Saturday mornings, checking the week's accounts, not in a ledger. There is no ledger. In her head. What came in, what went out, what is owed, what is owing. She keeps it all up there, perfectly organised, a mental ledger of impossible precision. Your father is still asleep or pretending to be. You know the difference by now. When he's actually asleep, his breathing is slow, with a slight catch at the end of the exhale that has been there for a year and is getting slightly worse. When he's pretending, it's too even, too careful. He lies there and listens to the apartment wake up and says nothing, because what is there to say? He was a bookbinder in Krakow. He bound books for a university library. His hands were precise and patient. Here he works in a garment factory on Forsyth Street, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, bent over a sewing machine in a room with 47 other people and 2 windows that don't open properly. He came home last Tuesday with a burn on his left wrist from the steam press that someone else operated too close to him. He didn't mention it. Your mother saw it. Neither of them said anything. Rivka is still asleep. She sleeps through everything, your sister. The entire building could collapse, and Rivka would sleep through it, curled up small, knees to chest, one arm over her face like she's blocking out light that doesn't exist yet. You stand at the stove and watch the water in the washtub not heat. It takes longer than you think it will every time. Always. Every Saturday you think, this time I'll start earlier and it'll be ready by 8. Every Saturday you start at 6:30 and it's ready by 8:30. The building's heat is inconsistent. The coal burns hot and then not hot. The washtub loses heat to the air faster than the stove puts it in. Outside, through the airshaft window, the opposite apartment is already visible in the growing grey light. Mr. Rothstein, or maybe his son, moving around in there in his undershirt, doing the same thing you're doing, standing at stove waiting. You don't make eye contact. Nobody makes eye contact through the airshaft. You're 6 feet apart and you've never once acknowledged each other's existence because the alternative is too strange to contemplate. The idea that you live your entire life 6 feet from another family, separated by a wall and a shaft of grey air, and you know their rhythms and their sounds and their smells, and you've never once spoken. The water starts to steam at around 7:45. Not boiling, you don't have enough coal to get it to a proper boil, and boiling water in a washtub you're about to get into would be a problem anyway. But steaming. The surface of the water moves slightly, and the air above it shimmers, and when you hold your hand over it you can feel actual warmth. This is not a small thing. Warm water in this room, in winter, is an achievement. It has cost you an hour of your morning, 4 trips up and down the stairs, your shoulder muscle, and approximately 8 cents worth of coal that you really could not spare. But here is the other thing about bath day. It's not just about being clean. You understand this at 16 in a way you could not have explained at 14 when you arrived. Cleanliness in a tenement is not a comfort. It's not a luxury. It's not even hygiene in the way the settlement house ladies mean when they come round with their pamphlets about sanitation. It's dignity. It's the physical proof that you are still yourself, that the building hasn't entirely swallowed you, that there is still a version of you that exists separate from the coal smoke and the cabbage smell and the permanent damp. You don't get much of that in here. You take it where you can find it. The problem, of course, is the stove. And by the stove, I mean the competition for the stove. Your building has what amounts to an unwritten but absolutely ironclad Saturday schedule for the use of cooking surfaces. You think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. In a building with this many families and this limited number of stoves per apartment, and with every family trying to heat bath water and cook Shabbat food simultaneously on the same Saturday morning, the management of shared heat is basically a political system. Mrs. Katz has Monday through Saturday morning, Shabbat prep priority, because she has been here the longest, and because her husband died 6 years ago, and she's a widow, and the building has a complex and unspoken system of respect for the recently bereaved, which stretches, apparently, to permanent stove priority. The family upstairs, the Goldbergs, 6 people in 2 rooms, has the 4 to 6 p.m. slot because Mrs. Goldberg works in a laundry until 3 and everyone knows it. The Blums, your family, have been here 2 years, which means you're somewhere in the middle of the hierarchy, which means you get what's left, which is usually early morning before the serious cooking starts, which is fine, which is what you're doing now, except that this morning, when you went out to get the 3rd bucket of water, you noticed that the door to 3A was open, which means the Epstein family is cooking already, which means their stovepipe shares a wall with your stovepipe, and when 2 coal stoves on the same flue are both running hard, there's a ventilation problem that means your fire doesn't burn quite as efficiently as it should. This is not a thing you can fix. This is a thing you have to work around. You work around it by feeding the fire a little more coal and losing about a cent you didn't have. You do this without thinking about it. You've been doing it for 2 years. It's just knowledge now, the way the building works, the small adjustments, the invisible negotiations. You couldn't explain them to someone who didn't live here, but you know them the way you know the sound of your father's cough. Let me tell you about the building itself, because the building matters. 97 Orchard Street was built in 1863. It was designed to hold roughly 22 families, 4 apartments per floor, 6 floors, 2 apartments per side of the staircase, each apartment 2 rooms. In 1895, it holds something closer to 40 families. You do the math. They started subdividing the apartments in the 1880s, when the immigration wave from Eastern Europe hit, and the demand for any kind of housing anywhere in the Lower East Side meant that landlords could charge $4 a month for half a room. So they put up walls. Thin walls, wooden lath and plaster, walls that do nothing to stop sound or smell, but do allow the landlord to legally call it a separate apartment. Where there was 1 room, there are now 2. Where there were 2 apartments on a side, there are now 3. The hallways, which were designed for occasional passage, now function as a kind of common area. Kitchen, laundry room, and social space all at once. The staircase is the highway. The tap is the village well. There are no bathtubs in the building, not one. I want to be precise about this because it's easy to hear no bathtub and think of it as an absence, a lack, a thing that's simply missing. But it's more than that. The building was not designed with bathing in mind at all. The architect, and I use that term loosely, because the men who designed these buildings were not really thinking about the bodies inside them. The architect thought about maximum occupancy, minimal cost, and enough structural integrity to avoid immediate collapse. Personal hygiene was not his problem. When Jacob Riis photographed this neighbourhood in 1890, he called it a disease factory. He wasn't wrong. The tuberculosis rate in the Lower East Side was 6 times the rate in wealthier Manhattan neighbourhoods. Children under 5 died of waterborne illness at rates that would be unimaginable today. Every summer, the newspapers printed the weekly death toll from the tenements, the way we print weather forecasts. Just information, just a number, just a count of the children. In the summer of 1894, 260 children in this neighbourhood died of cholera in a single month. In a single month. The reformers knew the water was contaminated. The city knew the housing was overcrowded. Everyone knew. The question was never whether they knew. The question was whether the people dying were the kind of people whose deaths required action. The answer, mostly, was no. Not yet. By 8 o'clock the water is warm enough. Your mother has cleared the table and moved the chair to create a small clear space around the washtub. Rivka is now awake, sitting on the mattress in her nightgown, watching you with the expression of someone who has resigned herself to waiting. You first, your mother says to Rivka. Why does she go first, you say. You know why. You always know why, and you always ask anyway. Because she goes first, your mother says. This is the complete explanation. Rivka goes first because she's the youngest. The water starts cleanest for the youngest and gets progressively less clean for everyone after. This is the logic, this is the order, this is how it works in every apartment on this floor, and probably most apartments in this building and most buildings on this street. By the time the fourth person gets in, the water is grey. You're going to be the fourth person. You know this. You have always known this. You have been the fourth person your entire life. Rivka steps into the washtub. She's small enough that she can almost fit properly, knees pulled up, arms around them. She makes a sound of pleasure that is so genuine and unguarded that something loosens slightly in your chest. For 60 seconds in this grey Saturday morning, in this overcrowded room, in this building that smells like 108 people's lives pressed together, your 11-year-old sister is sitting in warm water and her face looks like relief. That's what you're doing this for. Your father is awake now. He's sitting on the edge of the mattress, watching the window, the air shaft window, the grey rectangle of nothing, the 6 feet of space between your building and the one beside it. He has a cup of something hot in both hands. The cup came from Krakow. It's the one thing from before that survived the whole journey intact. A small green ceramic cup with a crack along the base that he filled with the wax before they left so it wouldn't leak. Good water? He asks. Good enough, your mother says. This is their entire conversation about bath day. There are things your parents don't discuss, and the mechanics of Saturday morning are one of them, because discussing the mechanics means confronting the distance between what a life should contain and what this one contains, and that is not a conversation for Saturday morning, and maybe not for any morning, and maybe not ever. He looks better today than he did last Tuesday. The cough is quieter this week. You've been watching it carefully, the way you watch everything carefully now, cataloguing small changes, adding them up. The doctor, a young man from the Educational Alliance who comes through the neighbourhood on Thursday afternoons and charges 25 cents for a consultation, which is 8 cents less than the doctors elsewhere. The doctor said last October that your father needed rest and fresh air and better food. Rest and fresh air are not available in a garment factory on Forsyth Street. Better food costs money. The doctor knew this when he said it. You knew this when he said it. Everybody knows everything and it changes nothing. You keep watching the cough. When it's your turn, the water is grey. Not terrible. Not as bad as it will be in summer when the heat of the room means even fresh water feels wrong, but grey. A slight film on the surface that you skim off with your hand and try not to look at too closely. You lower yourself into the wash tub. Your knees come up almost to your chin. The tub is not made for a 16-year-old's body. It's made for laundry. It holds you roughly the way a barrel holds something that doesn't quite fit, technically, but without comfort. The water is warm, not hot, not anymore. By the fourth person, the Coles work has been shared out across 3 previous bodies and an hour of heat lost to the cold air of the room. And what's left is a kind of theoretical warmth, more warm than cold, which is still better than the alternative. You have a sliver of soap, brown soap, coarse, the kind that is made to clean surfaces rather than skin, that smells of lye and very faintly of something that was probably animal once. It's not gentle, it scratches, but it lifts the weak from your skin, and that's what it's for. Your hands go in first. You've been working 6 days a week making paper flowers in a nearby factory. 6 cents per gross of flowers, and a gross of flowers is 144, and you can make maybe 2.5 gross a day if you don't stop, which means 15 cents on a good day, which is not a good day's wage anywhere in this city. But it's what you earn because you're 16 and you're a girl, and this is 1895, and those are the parameters, and your hands show it. The tips of your fingers are chafed from the paper. The joints of your right hand ache in the cold. There is green dye worked into the creases of your knuckles from the leaves, which won't wash out fully, which hasn't washed out fully in 6 weeks. You work the soap into your hands and the water stings the small cuts on your palms, and you sit with that for a moment, just breathing. Outside in the air shaft, a pigeon has landed on the opposite windowsill. It looks at you. You look at it. The pigeon has more privacy in this neighbourhood than you do. Here is what you don't get in this tub on this morning. Time. You get roughly 10 minutes before the water is too cold to be useful, and your mother needs the tub back for the laundry, because after bath day is laundry day, and laundry day uses the same tub and the same stove and the same water carrying process that bath day just completed, and it's a Saturday, and there's a logic to Saturdays in this building that moves everyone forward whether they want to or not. 10 minutes of warm water, that's the budget. You use it. You wash your hair, which takes most of those 10 minutes because your hair is thick and the soap doesn't lather in cold water the way it's supposed to, and you have to work it in with your fingers and then work it out again. And when you're done, your scalp feels clean in a way that it doesn't feel on any other day of the week, and that feeling is worth the entire morning's effort. That feeling is the point. When you get out, the cold air of the room hits your wet skin like a slap. You have one towel. It is slightly damp because it's always slightly damp. It's been damp since October because there's nowhere in this apartment that things fully dry in winter. The towel is damp and the room is cold, and you dry off as fast as you can, working the towel over your skin with short, efficient strokes. No ceremony. The water in the tub behind you is the colour of weak tea. You don't look at it. There is a public bath 2 blocks away on Orchard Street. The People's Baths, they call it, or the municipal baths. Whatever you want to call them, the reformers built them in 1891, paid for by a combination of city money and private donations, because someone finally ran the numbers and figured out that a neighbourhood where nobody could bathe was a neighbourhood where disease moved freely, and disease had a way of not respecting neighbourhood boundaries, and eventually the typhoid from the tenements ended up in the bodies of people who mattered more to the city government. So they built the baths. For 5 cents you get a shower. A proper shower, with hot water, with a private stall, with a clean towel. Hot water for 5 cents. The whole shower takes about 20 minutes and the water stays hot the entire time because it comes from a boiler, and the boiler does not know or care how many people have been in before you. 5 cents. That's almost a third of what you earn in a day. In theory, it's worth it. In theory, every Saturday the sensible thing to do is to put aside the 5 cents and walk 2 blocks and have 20 minutes of hot water in a private stall. In practice, the baths are crowded on Saturdays. In practice, the line starts before 8 in the morning, and by 9 o'clock you're looking at an hour wait in the cold. In practice, by the time you've waited and bathed and walked home, it's 11 o'clock and the morning is gone. In practice, 5 cents per person per week, times 4 people in this apartment is 20 cents a week, which is 80 cents a month, which is a fifth of the rent. Which is not something the Blum family has to spare. You could go alone. You've gone alone twice since you arrived. Once when the building's water was cut off completely for 3 days. The pipes froze in January of last year, and the landlord, a man named Sternberg, who you've met exactly twice, and who looks like a man who's never had to carry water upstairs in his life. The landlord said he'd fix it by Wednesday and fixed it on Friday. The second time you went alone was after a particularly bad week at the factory. The week Marta Kowalski got her fingers caught in the press, and the foreman told everyone to keep working and not to look, and you didn't know how to say it then, and you still don't quite. You needed to stand somewhere private and be completely clean for 20 minutes. You needed the evidence that you were still a person with a body that could be cared for. You went. You stood under the hot water for the full 20 minutes. When the attendant knocked on the door to say the time was up, you'd been crying for approximately 10 minutes, without knowing when you started. You don't tell anyone that story. This morning you're not going to the public baths. This morning is the tub, the grey water, the damp towel, the 10 minutes. This is the kind of morning it is. You stand in front of the small piece of mirror. It's not even a full mirror. It's a fragment, about 6 inches by 8 inches, nailed to the wall above the washstand. And you comb out your wet hair. The comb is tortoiseshell, a fake tortoiseshell, the kind made from celluloid that is nothing like actual tortoiseshell but is what you have. Your mother brought it from Krakow. It's older than Rivka. Your reflection in the fragment of mirror is grey and slightly distorted. One of those old silvered mirrors where the silver is coming away at the edges and the image at the corners is unreliable. But the centre is clear enough. You look at yourself. There's a version of you that your mother still talks about. The version from before you left. The girl who used to help in the kitchen of a neighbour who was a good cook, who used to walk to the edge of the village with her friend Gittler and look at the horizon and imagine. That girl had colour in her cheeks and her hair was thick and shiny, and she slept 8 hours every night in a real bed in a room with one other person. This girl has grey shadows under her eyes and green dye in her knuckles and a permanent slight slouch in her left shoulder from carrying the water bucket. This girl has been living in a 12 by 14 room for 2 years with 3 other people and 1 window, and she is learning that the person you are and the person you imagined you'd be are not always the same person. She's still there, though, the other girl. You can still see her sometimes. This is a good morning, bath morning. That helps. By 9 o'clock the apartment has transformed. The washtub, no longer a bathtub, now laundry, is full of new water. Your mother is working, her arms moving in that particular rhythm, the push and scrub and wring that you could identify in your sleep. The smell of the soap fills the room, fighting with the cold smoke. Your father has dressed. He's going to do what he does on Saturday mornings when the weather allows. Go down to the street and stand in the doorway for half an hour, breathing air that is marginally less recirculated than the apartment air. His coat is the good coat, the one he wore in Krakow. It's slightly too thin for New York winters. Polish winters are cold, but not this kind of cold, not this wind off the Hudson that hits the tenement building sideways and finds every gap. But he wears it because it's good, and because wearing good things matters even here and maybe especially here. Rivka, now clean and glowing slightly in the way children glow after a bath, is sitting on the floor drawing in the margin of an old newspaper. She draws constantly, Rivka. Buildings, people, the view from the window. She's drawn the air shaft opposite approximately 40 times from 40 slightly different angles. She's never been told she's good at it. There's no one in the apartment who has the language for that, but she is. The buildings she draws look like buildings. The people look like people. You pull on your dress, the blue one this time. It's Saturday, and you're clean, and the blue dress is going to happen. All right. This is a good moment to tell you something about the street, because you need to go out today. There are things to buy and things to deliver, and Saturdays have their own rhythm even in a neighbourhood that technically observes Shabbat, and the street is its own world and it's been waiting. You come down the stairs, past the second floor landing and the missing railing, past the broken crate someone has not moved yet, past the first floor where you can hear Mrs. Katz moving around behind her door, and you push through the street-level door and Orchard Street hits you. It hits you every time. You've been here 2 years and it hits you every single time. The sound is the first thing. It comes from everywhere at once. Cartwheels on cobblestones, a deep rhythmic clatter, not a smooth sound. Cobblestones are not smooth, they're uneven, and the wheels hit them at slightly different angles each time, and the sound is irregular, almost like music, but not quite. Like music played by someone who knows the notes but not the rhythm. Underneath the wheels, hooves, horses, several of them, pulling carts of different sizes, the big dray horses that pull the produce wagons heavy-footed and indifferent, and the smaller ones that pull the push carts at a trot. But the dominant sound is human. The street vendors, and there are vendors on every square foot of available pavement, each one with a voice tuned to project over the others. Pickles, fresh pickles, sour pickles, half sour. Bread, bread, black bread, white bread. Herring, smoked herring. Who wants herring? Buttons, thread, I've got buttons. Old clothes, bringing old clothes, cash for old clothes. Everyone shouting because everyone else is shouting. A chorus of commerce performed at maximum volume 6.5 days a week. Winter and summer, in 3 languages simultaneously. English and Yiddish, and some Italian from the southern end of the block, with occasional outbursts in Polish or Russian that you understand better than you're supposed to. The smell out here is different from the smell inside. Inside smells of enclosed human life. Outside smells of what human life produces when it operates at volume. Fish. The pickle barrel on the corner of Orchard and Delancey, which has been in approximately the same location for as long as anyone can remember, exuding its brine smell in a radius of about 30 feet. Bread, baking somewhere close. That yeasty warmth. Horse manure, of which there is a continuous and considerable supply on any street with working horses. And underneath everything, The particular smell of a winter street in a city that burns coal. That grey mineral sharpness that coats the back of your throat. You breathe it in. This is your neighbourhood. For better or worse, this is yours. The pushcart men are set up by the time you step out. They're along both sides of the street, wheel to wheel, their carts creating a kind of outdoor market that the city technically regulates and practically ignores. They sell everything, vegetables and fish and cloth and buttons and used tools and candy and bread and newspapers and keys and small religious objects and the kind of miscellaneous hardware that has no obvious category. You need soap, if there's any in the budget, the proper kind if possible. A small amount of bread if your mother didn't make it last night, which she didn't because the flour is running low, and you need to drop off a bundle of flowers, finished flowers, paper flowers, the product of approximately 8 hours of your work this week, at Mrs. Feinstein's apartment on Hester Street, because Mrs. Feinstein is the woman who connects you to the factory and who takes a small percentage and who needs the bundle by noon. None of these errands are complicated. All of them together will take you 2 hours. But you're going to take the long way. You always take the long way on Saturdays when you're clean and wearing the blue dress. You know this about yourself. You don't apologize for it. The first person you see on the street who you actually know, beyond nodding distance, beyond building proximity, is Gitka Mandelbaum from the 4th floor, not Gittler from home. Different name, different Gitka. This is a coincidence that startled you the first time you met her, because you'd just arrived and everything was still too new and too sharp, and you turned around to someone saying your old friend's name, and for a second, well, this Gitka is 17, broad-shouldered, permanently cheerful in a way that is not naivety but a kind of chosen defiance. She works in a shirtwaist factory on Clinton Street, and she hates it with such specific and detailed passion that she can describe which particular machine makes which particular sound, and exactly how that sound enters your skull at around 2 in the afternoon and stays there until you fall asleep. She's on the street with her younger brother, a boy of about 8 who's currently throwing stones at a dog, which the dog is ignoring with impressive composure. "Stop that," Gitka says to him, not looking up. Then to you, "Clean, clean," you say. This is the Saturday morning greeting among the women of the 4th floor. One word. That's all it takes. You're either clean or you're not, and if you're not, it means something went wrong. The water, the coal, someone sick, some other crisis. And the word carries all of that. Where are you going? Hester Street, then maybe the market on Essex. I'll walk with you to the corner. She falls in beside you and you navigate the pushcart alley together, sidestepping a cart that is being manoeuvred with absolutely no consideration for pedestrians, ducking past 2 women who are in the middle of a negotiation over what appears to be a very small chicken. Gitka's brother has given up on the dog and is now running ahead through the crowd, weaving between legs with a confidence that is specific to children under 10 in this neighbourhood, who are so accustomed to crowds that they move through them the way fish move through water. Something is happening at the end of the block. You can tell before you see it. The crowd has a different density there, a clustering that means people have stopped to watch something rather than just passing through. You and Gitka get closer. It's an inspector, a tenement inspector, a city official with a clipboard and a coat that cost more than everything you own. He's standing outside the building at the end of the block. Not your building, the one that's been cited before, the one where someone reported the water being cut off, and he's writing something on his clipboard while the building's super, a man named Piasecki, who has the particular exhausted look of someone who is permanently caught between the demands of a landlord he's afraid of and the needs of tenants he's at least theoretically responsible for, stands beside him and says something in a low voice that you can't hear. The tenants are clustered at the building's entrance and on the steps. Some of them are watching the inspector. Some of them are watching each other. Some are trying to look unconcerned, which is hard to manage when a man with a clipboard is determining whether your building is legal enough to stay in or whether you need to find somewhere else to live, which somewhere else does not practically exist in this neighbourhood at any rent you can afford. Third time this year, Gitka says. What happens if they cite it? She shrugs, a specific shrug. The landlord pays a fine. The fine is less than fixing the problem. The problem doesn't get fixed. Maybe in a year someone filed another report. This is the cycle. You've seen it twice since you arrived. The inspectors come, they write things on their clipboards. The landlord pays what he's required to pay, which is not what it costs to actually repair anything. The repairs don't happen. The tenants stay, because the alternative, no shelter at all, is worse than the documented shelter. The reformers have theories about this. You've heard their theories at the settlement house, which is a place on Henry Street run by a woman named Lillian Wald, who is genuinely trying to do something, and who has smart ideas and who is fighting a system that is bigger and more expensive than her ideas. The reformers say, the law needs teeth. They say, the fines need to be punitive. They say, the landlords need to be made to care. You've started to think that the reformers are right about the problem and optimistic about the timeline. But you haven't said this to anyone. You're 16. Nobody has asked. You leave Gitka at the corner and walk east on Hester Street. Hester Street is a different texture from Orchard. Narrower, if that's possible. The buildings lean more distinctly toward each other overhead. On summer days, there are days when the sky above Hester Street is essentially invisible, blocked by lines of laundry strung between the buildings from the upper floors, shirts and trousers and bedding creating an intermittent awning over the street, dripping slightly in the way damp laundry always drips, always onto whoever is below. In winter, the laundry is frozen solid by midday. The pushcart men here specialise in food, fish primarily. The Lower East Side runs on fish, herring pickled and smoked and fresh, in barrels and on boards and in the hands of men who've been selling fish so long the smell has permanently colonised their skin. Carp and whitefish and pike. On the weekends before holidays the carp are kept alive in water-filled barrels so they're fresh, and there's a period in autumn leading up to the high holidays when Hester Street smells almost entirely of live fish. Today it smells of cold fish and cold air and the particular tang of the pickle barrels further up the block. You pass Mrs. Greenbaum's apartment building, 5 stories, newer than yours by about 10 years, with a hallway that has slightly more light than your hallway and otherwise identical in every relevant way. And you think about Mrs. Greenbaum, who you saw last Tuesday carrying a pot of water up the stairs with both hands, and who is, 73 years old. 73 years old, carrying a pot of water up 4 flights of stairs in winter in 1895. This is normal. This is what 73 looks like in this neighbourhood if you're still upright and functional. Nobody carries the pot for you. There is no elevator. There is no one whose job it is to bring water to the apartments of the elderly. There is only the pot and the stairs and the cold tap in the hallway and the knowledge that the water needs to come up somehow and nobody else is going to do it. Your grandmother in Krakow had a kitchen with a pump, an actual pump in the kitchen. It was considered basic, unremarkable. She didn't think of herself as fortunate for having it. You think about that sometimes. How much depends on what you consider the baseline? Mrs. Feinstein's building is 3 blocks east, on the corner where Hester meets Allen Street, which is one of the wider streets in the neighbourhood and therefore always windy. The cold coming straight off the East River and channeling between the buildings in a way that makes winter on Allen Street a specific and personal experience. You have the bundle of flowers in a newspaper-wrapped package under your arm. A week's work. 240 paper flowers, mostly roses with some lilies, green paper leaves attached to wire stems, the product of approximately 12 hours of your labour across 6 days. The roses are made in 5 pieces, the outer petals cut from crimson paper with a small scissors, the inner petals from a slightly darker crimson, the centre from a twisted piece of a third colour, the calyx from green, the leaf separate. 5 pieces per flower, assembled and glued. Approximately 1 minute per flower when you're moving well, longer when your hands are cold or stiff, or when Rivka is sick and needs attention, and you're trying to work at the table while simultaneously watching her. You make 48 cents a week from this work. 48 cents. That is your contribution to the household. Your father makes perhaps $6 in a good week. Your mother takes in additional piecework, finishing seams on trousers, which she does at the table after supper, which is how you fall asleep, with the sound of her needle and the slight creak of the chair, and makes perhaps $1.50. The rent is $9 a month. You do not need a paper and pencil to do this arithmetic. You have been doing this arithmetic in your head since you arrived, and you will do it until something changes, which so far it has not. Mrs. Feinstein answers on the second knock. She's a large woman in her 50s with the energy of someone who's been running things since before you were born, and intends to keep running them indefinitely. She looks at your bundle, takes it, counts the flowers without opening the package. She can tell by feel and weight, and nods. Good. You're light by maybe 6. You're not light by 6. You counted them yourself 3 times. But Mrs. Feinstein always says you're light by some amount, because Mrs. Feinstein's system is to say you're light, see if you accept the resulting deduction, and if you do, keep it. It's not personal. It's just business, as she understands it. I counted 240, you say. I counted 234. I counted 240. She looks at you. You look at her. 238, she says. 240, you say. This is a dance. You've been doing it for 8 months. The number she settles on will be somewhere between 238 and 240. The difference is 1 cent on 4 flowers. 1 cent. You're going to stand here and argue for 1 cent. Yes, you are. 240, you say, and your voice is entirely steady. She gives you the 2 cents extra. She doesn't look happy about it, but she gives it to you. You don't say anything. You take the coins. You put them in the pocket of the blue dress where they make a small, satisfying weight. 2 cents. That's an egg. That's a small bread roll. That's the accumulation of 40 minutes of your work in a week that is never simple and never easy. You take the 2 cents and you don't apologize for taking them. On the way back, you take the long way. You go south, down toward the river, because on clear winter mornings you can sometimes see the bridge from down here. The Brooklyn Bridge, completed 12 years ago in 1883, still the largest suspension bridge in the world, still slightly unreal even after 2 years of occasional views of it. You round a corner, and there it is. Or rather, there's the part of it that's visible from here, which is the tower on the Manhattan side, rising above the rooftops of the warehouses on South Street, so much larger than everything around it that it looks like it belongs to a different city, a different scale of city, a city being designed for something grander than the one you're living in. The tower is granite, 176 feet above the river at its peak. They built it while people argued that it would collapse, while rival engineers wrote letters to newspapers explaining precisely how it would collapse, while the newspapers gleefully published the letters, and then it didn't collapse, and now it just stands there, casually larger than everything around it. Your father walked across it once, in his first month in New York when he still had the energy for exploration. He said the walkway was full of people from everywhere. Workers from Brooklyn going to work in Manhattan, families out for a Sunday excursion, vendors trying to sell things to people in motion, a man playing a fiddle near the Manhattan Tower. He said you could look straight down between the boards and see the river, and the river was so far below it didn't look real. He hasn't walked across it since. The factory takes Sundays now, at least through the busy seasons, and the busy seasons are most of the year. You stand at the end of the block and look at the tower for a full minute. The wind off the river is cold enough to make your eyes water. You're a girl from a village outside Krakow standing on a street in Manhattan, looking at the largest bridge in the world, and you're 16 years old, and your hands smell of yellow laundry soap, and your hair is still slightly damp, and you're clean, properly clean, for the first time in a week. Some things are still large. You turn and walk back to Orchard Street. The afternoon has its own rhythm. Saturdays after the morning work have a slower quality that is not quite rest. Rest is not really available in this apartment, but something adjacent to it. A letting down, a reduction in urgency. Your mother has finished the laundry. It's hanging on lines strung across the room. Your father's work shirts, Rivka's dress, the sheets, the towels, including the slightly damp one you used this morning, which is now hanging and will be slightly damp again by tomorrow. The room is steamy and warm from the washtub's heat, which is one of the unintentional benefits of laundry day. The apartment is actually warm for a few hours in the afternoon. Your father came back in from the street about 11, colder than when he left, which is always what happens, and which never seems to discourage him from going. He's sitting with a book now, an actual book, borrowed from the library on East Broadway, the educational institution that was started specifically for this neighbourhood and which has books in Yiddish and English and some in Polish, which your father considers a miracle deserving of regular acknowledgement. He reads slowly in English. He's been learning for 2 years, the same 2 years you've been here, and he's further along than most of the men your parents know because he was already literate in 2 languages when he arrived, and adding a third is not as hard as starting from nothing. He moves his lips when he reads English slightly, which he doesn't do in Yiddish. He doesn't know he does it. You've never told him. Rivka is asleep again. She does this, falls asleep in the afternoon with the suddenness of someone who has used up all available energy and requires immediate resupply. She's curled up on the mattress with her arms around the fragment of drawing she was working on this morning, protecting it in her sleep. You sit at the table. You take out the materials for next week's flowers, the paper, the wire, the small scissors. You begin. Here is what making paper flowers sounds like. The small precise sound of scissors through paper, the slight creak of the wire when you twist it, the soft tap of the glue brush, and underneath it all the sound of the building, The sound of 350 people living above and below and beside you. Footsteps, many footsteps. The building has its own percussion. The heavy step of the man on the floor above, the running of the children on the floor below, the creak of the staircase that sounds like a human voice if you half listen and know you're half listening. Voices arriving muffled through walls and floors and becoming comprehensible in fragments. A name, a number, once in a while a laugh. A baby crying. This baby has been crying on and off for 4 days, and you've started to wonder, in the distracted way you wonder about things while your hands are working, whether the baby is sick. The kind of sick that requires a doctor. The kind that the settlement house nurses would call concerning. You're not friends with that family, you don't know them well enough to ask, but you're aware of the baby the way you're aware of everything in this building, at a particular frequency, below the level of active attention, always. The scissors, the paper, the wire. You make 56 flowers in 2 hours. I need to tell you something about the water situation in this building, because it matters for what happens next, and also because it's the kind of thing that gets left out of the history books. The hallway tap on your floor, the one that services 8 families, roughly 35 people, is supplied by a pipe that runs up from the street main. The street main in this part of the Lower East Side was installed in 1874. It's iron, and it's old, and it leaks in places that the city has partially repaired and fully ignored, and it has a pressure problem that means on Saturday afternoons, when the whole neighbourhood is doing its cooking and laundry, and the water demand spikes, the flow from the tap on the 3rd floor drops to approximately a dribble. You know this because you went back for a bucket of water at 2:30, and it took 12 minutes to fill. 12 minutes standing in the hallway holding a bucket under a tap that produces water at approximately the speed of a very slow leak. 3 people came and went while you waited. Mrs. Hirsch from 3C, who is 8 months pregnant and who should not be carrying water, but who was doing so anyway because what is the alternative? Old Mr. Birnbaum from 3D, who is deaf in one ear and shouts slightly even in quiet conversations, who said something to you about the pressure that you already knew, and he already knew you already knew, but which needed to be said anyway because saying it is a form of solidarity, a registration of the shared complaint, a refusal to accept the dribble without noting that it is, in fact, a dribble. You filled your bucket. Your shoulder registered the familiar protest. You carried it back. The pipe has a voice on cold nights, this pipe. It contracts slightly in the cold and it makes a sound like a distant groan travelling through the building structure at around 2 in the morning. You've heard it dozens of times. You've told Rivka it's the building dreaming. At 3:30, the downstairs family's baby stops crying. The silence is so sudden and complete that several people on the floor notice it at the same time. You can tell because there's a shift in the ambient sound of the building, a collective subconscious exhale, a reduction in tension. Then someone knocks at your door. It's Mrs. Weiss from 2B, a floor down, the neighbour who connects everyone with everything, the woman who always knows who is sick and who has medicine, and who needs a doctor and who needs a rabbi and who has extra bread. She's about 40, compact, with a face that has been permanently organised around the efficient management of other people's needs. The baby on 2, she says. He's breathing better. The nurse came. She means the visiting nurse from Lillian-Wold settlement. They come through the buildings on Thursday and Saturday afternoons. The nurses, carrying their bags full of things that most families in this building can't afford from a regular doctor. They charge what you can pay, which for most families means they charge nothing, which means they're running on donations and good intentions and the iron conviction that preventable death should be prevented. This baby is not going to die today. At least not today. Good, your mother says, which is what she always says. Good. One word. Complete sentence. He was running a temperature since Thursday, Mrs. Weiss says. The mother didn't sleep. Your mother makes a small sound that contains a week's worth of understanding. She has other children. 2. A girl about this one's age. She gestures at Rivka, who has woken up again and is watching from the mattress. And a boy, maybe 5. Your mother gets up. She goes to the stove. She takes the pot of soup that has been there since this morning, the soup that was going to be supper, and she fills a smaller pot with about half of it. Take this down, she says to you. You take the pot downstairs. The family on the second floor is named Anastasia. They're from somewhere in the south of Italy, which is not a place you know anything about except that it's warm there and the food has olive oil in it, which is not something that features heavily in the cooking on your floor. The mother's name is Carmela. The father works at the docks. You've seen him on the stairs occasionally, a large quiet man with permanently dirty hands. Carmela comes to the door looking like someone who has not slept since Thursday and knows it. You hold out the pot. She looks at it. She looks at you. Her English is not good. Your Italian is non-existent, but she looks at the pot, and she looks at you, and something passes between you that doesn't require a shared language. She takes the pot. She says something in Italian that you don't understand, but you understand it. You nod. You go back upstairs. This is a thing about the tenements that doesn't make it into the reform reports, or the newspaper exposés, or the photographs by men who came in from outside to document the misery. The mutual aid. Not the organised kind, not the formal aid societies and the Landsmannschaften and the fraternal organisations, though those exist too and they matter. The daily kind. The soup when someone doesn't have it. The watching of a child when a mother needs to work. The carrying of a pot up to the 4th floor when the woman on the 4th floor's husband is sick and her daughter is too young to manage the weight. The building is overcrowded and dark and the water pressure is bad and the landlord doesn't fix the railing and someone is always sick and the rent is too high. This is all true. Also, when a woman on the 2nd floor hasn't slept in 2 days because her baby is ill, the woman on the 3rd floor sends soup down. Both of these things are true. At the same time, about the same building, you're learning to hold them both without needing to choose one. By 5 o'clock the light is gone. Winter dark in New York comes fast and complete. One moment there's grey daylight through the airshaft window, and then there's blue, and then there's nothing. The room fills with the particular darkness of a room without electric light. You have gas, your building has gas fixtures, but gas costs money, and in the evenings before supper the gas stays off and the room operates on candlelight, one candle, moved from surface to surface as needed. The candle throws warm shadows. Your father is still reading, holding the book tilted toward the candle, his face orange lit and unfamiliar. Rivka has given up on the newspaper and has graduated to drawing on a flattened paper flower bag, which is the closest thing to proper paper she has. Your mother is making supper with half the soup she had this morning, and the bread that is 2 days old but still acceptable, and a small amount of potatoes that she's been managing since Wednesday. The smell of the building at supper time is a specific thing, a layered composite of every family's cooking happening simultaneously, all of it travelling through the walls and floors in concentrated form so that your apartment smells not just of your own food, but of everyone's food. The Italian family downstairs with whatever they have left of whatever Carmela is making with the soup you brought down. The cat's family with the inevitable smell of something overcooked, in the way of a woman who has been overcooking things for decades. The Goldbergs upstairs with their Friday leftover Holland, still sitting warm on the back of the stove. You know all of them. You couldn't tell them apart by sight. The smells, but you know them. At supper your father coughs twice. Not bad coughs. A clearing of the throat, really. But your mother's shoulders go slightly tighter. You see it. Rivka sees it. She glances up from her drawing with that particular expression children make when they're monitoring a situation they're not supposed to be monitoring. Nobody says anything. You eat the soup. It's good. Your mother's soup is always good, which is an achievement given what she has to work with, which is mainly determination and the knowledge of how to get flavour from bones when you can afford bones and from nothing when you can't. I saw the bridge today, you say. Something to say. The Brooklyn Bridge. Your father looks up. Just the tower, you say, from the end of the block on South Street. He nods. He's quiet for a moment. I walked across it, he says, for the second time in your life. When we first came, I know. You should walk across it. I will, you say, when it's warmer. Don't wait for warm, he says. You'll wait a long time for warm. He smiles when he says it. It's a small joke. The way things are cold, the way warmth is not reliably forthcoming, the way you do things anyway because waiting for better conditions is also its own kind of giving up. You smile back. Rivka doesn't understand the joke, but she smiles too because she likes it when there are smiles. After supper, the evening closes in. Your mother does what she always does after supper, the sewing. This week it's trouser seams, a bundle that a boy from the factory dropped off on Thursday, which she'll return on Monday finished, for which she'll receive approximately 60 cents. Her needle moves in small, precise arcs. The thread whispers. Your father reads for another hour, and then the book goes back to the table and his eyes close and he is asleep, almost immediately. The particular exhausted sleep of a man who wakes at 5 and stands at a machine for 10 hours. He sleeps sitting slightly forward with his hands open in his lap, the gesture of someone who has let something go. Rivka is supposed to be sleeping. She's not sleeping. She's under the blanket on the mattress with the flour sack drawing and a candle stub that she's not supposed to have, that you can see the glow of through the edge of the blanket. You don't say anything. You are exactly the same at 11. You sit at the table with the paper flowers. An hour passes. The sound of the building settles into its nighttime register, quieter but not quiet, the persistent low hum of 350 people existing. The baby on the second floor stays quiet. That particular prayer remains answered. The needle, the paper, the thread, the wire. It's 9 o'clock when Gitka knocks on the door. Not the apartment door. The specific knock she gives the hallway wall when she's passing. 2 slow and 1 fast, the signal that means, I'm here if you want company. You go out to the hallway. She's standing by the tap in her coat, which means she's been out somewhere and just come in. Her face is cold flushed, her breath making small clouds in the hallway air. Where were you, you ask? The meeting. She means the meeting at the social hall on Canal Street, the one the union organisers hold every other Saturday, where they talk about the conditions in the shirtwaist factories and what might be done about them. You've been once. You stood in the back and listened to a man named Samuel Gompers, who was either a hero or a troublemaker, depending on who in this neighbourhood you ask, describe in precise detail the hours and conditions and wages that are killing people slowly, and then describe what workers had done in other industries to change those conditions, and then describe what could be done here. You went once. Your mother told you not to go again. She said, "We don't need more problems. You understand her position. You disagree with it, but you're 16 and you live in her 12 by 14 room." "How was it?" you ask. Gitka leans against the wall. She has a particular way of standing when she's trying to figure out how much to say, a slight gathering of herself, like she's deciding how much of what she's carrying to set down. "There's going to be a strike," she says. "Not now. Maybe spring. Maybe summer. There are women in 3 factories who've been meeting for months." You feel something move in your chest. Not excitement exactly. Something more complicated than that. "What factory?" you ask. She names a factory on Division Street and another on Grand, and then she says, "Rosenstein's on Clinton Street. That's 3 blocks from the factory where you work." "What do they want?" you ask. Though you know. You always know. You've known since your first week when the foreman told you that restroom breaks were at his discretion, and one of the other girls told you that his discretion was not something you wanted to test. 10 hours, Gitka says, not 12, not 14, 10, and pay for the overtime when it goes over, and windows that open. Windows that open. It sounds like such a small thing. You know it's not a small thing. You know it's the thing people are going to fight about for the next 20 years in this city, and some of the people fighting are going to lose things they can't get back. "What does your mother say?" you ask. Gitka's expression shifts. Something flattens in it. "My mother says we can't afford to lose the work. But I know," she shrugs. Not the specific shrug from before. This one is heavier. "I know what she means. And I know what she means is real. And also I know that I can't keep doing 14 hours and then come home and do the laundry. And then do the 12 hours and then come home and do the laundry. And then do the 14 hours. She stops. You stand in the cold hallway and listen to the building breathe. "You should come to the next meeting," she says. "I know," you say. "Your mother doesn't have to know. She always knows." Gitka laughs, short and real. "Mine too. They always know." She pushes off the wall. She's going upstairs. She's going to sleep. "Hannah," she says at the bottom of the stairs. You look at her. "You looked nice today. The blue dress." She goes upstairs. You stand in the hallway for a moment, in the cold, listening to the pipe groan somewhere in the wall. Then you go back inside. It's late now, 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30. Your mother has finished the sewing. She does it by feel toward the end when the candle burns low, her fingers knowing the work well enough that her eyes aren't necessary. She's put the bundle back in the corner for Monday. She looks tired in a way that is not just tonight's tired, but all the tiredness accumulated over years, sitting in her face and her shoulders and her hands. You want to say something to her. You don't know what. "Good day?" she asks. "Good day," you say. She nods. She goes to the bed. Within 10 minutes she's asleep. Your father is already asleep. Rivka's flower sack candle has gone dark. You sit at the table alone with the last of the candle, and the sound of the building and the flowers. You still have 24 to finish. You work. Here is the thing about Saturday in a tenement. The thing you only understand from inside it. The bath is not the day. The bath is not what Saturday is. What Saturday is the only day in the week that has a different shape. Not a better shape, necessarily. Not easier, but different. The shape of a day where there is 1 hour, 1 hour out of 16 waking ones, that is yours alone, in warm water, clean, and where the rest of the day is organised around the fact of that hour. 20 gallons of water, 4 trips up the stairs, 40 minutes on the stove, 10 minutes in the tub. That's bath day. That's what clean costs in 1895 if you live in a tenement on Orchard Street in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And you will do it again next Saturday, and the Saturday after that, and every Saturday for as long as you live in this building, because the building is not going to change, and the pipe is not going to develop better pressure, and the washtub is not going to become a bathtub, and you are not going to become someone who can afford 5 cents every week at the public baths. So you do this. You carry the water, you heat it, you get in before it cools, you wash your hair, and it is enough. For that hour it is enough. You blow out the candle. The room is dark. The building settles around you. Its particular groans and creaks. The voice of a structure that was not well made and has been stressed beyond its intended capacity for 30 years and is holding together out of inertia and the weight of the people inside it. Your parents are breathing. Rivka is breathing. The baby on the second floor is breathing. Outside, through the airshaft window, the sky is not quite dark. It never is in Manhattan. There's always the glow of the gaslights from the streets below, the lights of the warehouses on South Street, the faint illumination from somewhere far uptown where they have electric lights now, properly electric, the kind that don't gutter or smell. The sky above the buildings has a particular orange-grey quality at night, as if the city is generating its own light from the friction of all that living. You lie down on the mattress next to Rivka. She rolls toward you in her sleep, one arm reaching and then settling against your side. Her hair smells of the yellow soap. Both of you do. It's the one smell that's entirely yours tonight. Tomorrow you will begin making flowers at 7. Tomorrow your father will go to the factory because the busy season doesn't pause for Sunday, and the foreman doesn't pause for Sunday, and the $6 a week doesn't get made without going. Tomorrow the water pressure will be what it will be. But tonight you are clean. Tonight the building breathes around you and above you and below you. 350 lives going on simultaneously in their 12 by 14 rooms, all of them eating their thin soup and sewing their seams and watching their sick children and carrying their water and adding up their numbers in their heads and knowing the numbers exactly and not saying the numbers aloud, because some things are better carried quietly. You close your eyes. The building is still talking. It's always talking. The pipe in the wall, the footstep above, the distant voice, the creak of the stair. It doesn't stop at night, this city. It doesn't stop at night, and it doesn't stop in winter, and it doesn't stop for your tiredness or your cold or your shoulder that aches from the bucket, but it quiets slightly. A lowering of the register from the full volume daylight roar to something you can be inside. You're inside it. You belong to it now, this city, this neighborhood, this street. More than you belong to the village outside Krakow that is becoming a memory now, fading at the edges, the fields blurring, the faces softening. What's sharp now is this, the stairs and the tap and the smell and the sound, the bridge tower above the rooftops, Gitka's laugh in the cold hallway, the weight of the bucket in your bad shoulder, the 2 cents you didn't give up. The girl who left Krakow and the girl lying on this mattress are related. They came from the same body, but they are not quite the same person, and it's too dark to see clearly where one ended and the other began. You don't need to see clearly. You just need to be here. Sleep comes the way it always does after a long day, without permission, without ceremony, simply arriving the way hunger arrives or cold arrives, a body claiming what it needs. Your thoughts slow. The flowers you still need to finish are tomorrow's problem. The meeting on Canal Street is a thought you'll have in daylight. The strike that might come in summer is someone else's problem tonight, or it's yours, or it's both, but either way it will wait. Rivka's arm is warm against your side. Your hair smells clean. You've been warm today for 10 minutes. You've seen the bridge tower. You've stood in Gitka's laugh in the cold hallway and felt the 2 pennies in your pocket and brought soup to the woman with the sick baby. That's a day. That's a real day. Warm enough, fed enough, accounted for. The pipe groans in the wall. The baby on the 2nd floor does not cry. Somewhere outside, a man is calling the hour in a voice that carries up the airshaft and into the room like something from a different century, which it almost is. That old ritual of marking time, shouting the hours into the dark so people know how much of the night is left. 10 voices, maybe 11. You don't count them. You don't need to know the time. The time is later than it was and earlier than tomorrow will be, and that's all you need from time to night. The Lower East Side you're falling asleep in tonight will be unrecognizable in 50 years. The tenements will be torn down. The pushcart men will be gone. Orchard Street will be a museum, an actual museum. They will restore one of these buildings and people will pay money to walk through the rooms and imagine what it was like. The washtub will be in a glass case. The 2-cent flowers will be in an archive somewhere, preserved. The people who carried the water up these stairs will be in the photographs, the ones taken by the man with a camera who came to document the misery, black and white, slightly blurred, carrying water with the set-faced determination of people who are not performing their difficulty for the camera and would prefer you didn't photograph them but have other things to deal with right now. And you will be one of them, or you'll be a version of them, or the girl who becomes you will stand in those photographs with the same expression and the same shoulders and the same 8 gallons in the washtub. And the people who come after, the people walking through the museum paying to see the room, they will look at the washtub and they will look at the photographs and they will think, how hard, how difficult, how unimaginable, and they'll be right and they'll be wrong. Because what you can't put in a glass case is the baby breathing better, the soup on the stairs, Gitka's laugh, the 2 cents, the bridge tower in the winter morning light, the things that weren't difficulty, the things that were just life. Sunday comes grey and cold. In theory, Sunday is rest. In the culture your family came from, Saturday is the day of rest. You observe it in the modified way of people who cannot afford full observance, which means your father doesn't work at the factory, but your mother still sews and you still make flowers because the factory foreman doesn't know or care about your Shabbat, and the work needs to come in on Monday. But Sunday is the day the building breathes slightly differently. The garment factories are closed. The children don't have school. The pushcart men on Orchard Street operate at a reduced volume, the street having a Sunday quality that is not quite quiet, but is at least quieter. You wake at 7 instead of 6. 1 hour, that's your Sunday. You lie there for that hour in the particular luxury of not having to move immediately. The room is cold. The stove went out at some point in the night and hasn't been restarted yet, and the air has that sharp quality of a room where no heat has been generated for several hours. But you're warm under the blanket, and Rivka is warm beside you, and your father is still sleeping, and the building is still in its lower register. 1 hour where nothing is required. You look at the ceiling. The ceiling of the room is low and slightly stained in one corner from a leak on the floor above that was repaired last spring, imperfectly, so that there's a map of old water damage up there, a brown and grey territory that has developed its own topography over years. You've spent enough mornings looking at it that you know its shapes, the way you know the layout of the room. There's a long dark streak that runs from the corner toward the centre, and a cluster of smaller marks that could be anything, and a section near the window where the plaster has been repaired, and the repair is a slightly different white. Rivka says the dark streak looks like a horse. Your father says it looks like a river. You think it looks like nothing. You think it looks like water damage from a poorly repaired roof. But you don't say that. The horse and the river are better. Your father is the one who restarts the stove. He does it every Sunday morning, a ritual that has become his. The coal, the kindling, the careful building of the fire in the firebox with the patience of a man who was precise with his hands before the factory got them and is still precise with them in the mornings when they haven't stiffened yet. He does it without waking your mother, which is the point. Sunday is the one morning your mother sleeps past 6, which she does with the totality of someone catching up on a debt accumulated over years. She sleeps on her back with her arms at her sides and her face entirely composed, not the restless sleep of someone whose mind is still running, but something deeper. The sleep of a person who has been given permission. You sit at the table and watch your father at the stove. He moves slowly, carefully. There's a hesitation in his right shoulder that wasn't there last year, a slight guarding against the direction that hurts. You've noticed it for 3 months. You haven't said anything because saying it would make it more real than it currently is, and you're not ready for it to be more real. The fire catches. The stove begins its particular ticking as the metal expands with the heat. Within 20 minutes the room starts to warm. Your father puts the pot on. "Hannah," he says without turning around. "Yes. You should go to the baths this week. The proper baths." You look at his back. "It's 5 cents, you say. I know what it costs. I know what we need." He turns around. His face in the morning light is older than it used to be. The lines deeper, the shadows under his eyes a permanent installation. But his eyes are the same, precise and patient and entirely present. "You should go once. Take Rivka." You don't argue. You don't say, "And you?" You don't say, "You need it more than we do." You don't say, "Your cough has been better this week and I've been tracking it and better is not fixed." You say, "All right." He nods. He turns back to the stove. That's the whole conversation. Monday comes the way Mondays come, without ceremony, without preparation, without the courtesy of arriving slowly. You're up at 5:30. The factory where you work is on Forsyth Street. Not the same factory as your father, a different building, slightly smaller, with a foreman named Mr. Kessler, who is not unkind but is operating under pressures that make kindness intermittent. The factory makes paper goods, flowers primarily, but also the kind of decorative fringe and paper ribbon that goes on boxes of candy and gifts, and the decorated hats sold in shops on Broadway that you will never be able to afford. The work is not dangerous the way some factory work is dangerous. No steam presses, no heavy machinery, no open flame technically, though the paper dust in the air on certain dry days makes the other girls nervous in a way that nobody talks about directly, but that everyone is always slightly thinking about. What it is monotonous. And cold in winter, hot in summer, because the heating and cooling of the room are the secondary concerns after production, and production runs at the same rate whether your fingers are stiff or your head aches from the heat. You walk to the factory in the dark. It's 15 minutes from the building, through streets that are already filling up even at this hour. The city's metabolism runs early, especially in this neighbourhood, where people who can't afford to waste daylight start moving before the sun does. The cold is solid this morning, the kind of cold that doesn't negotiate. Your breath makes clouds, and the cobblestones have a thin glaze of ice that makes the third block slightly treacherous. You walk carefully, keeping to the side of the street where the buildings throw off a little heat. 2 other girls from the building are going the same direction. Lena Horowitz from the 5th floor, who is 14 and should probably still be in school and knows it and doesn't mention it. And a girl whose name you still don't know after 3 months of walking the same route, whom you have established a comfortable relationship of mutual nodding with. She's from somewhere south of Minsk, and she works in a different factory 2 blocks further on, and she walks at exactly the same speed as you, which is the primary basis of their relationship. The city at 5:30 on a winter Monday morning is a specific thing, darker than the evening, darker than midnight somehow, with a quality of intention that midnight doesn't have. These are not the people who are still up at midnight. These are the people who are already up at 5:30, which is different. It's the darkness of work rather than the darkness of the end of pleasure, and it moves differently, purposefully in one direction. The factory floor has 43 people in it on most days. Today there are 41, because Masha Berkowitz is sick, a cold that has moved into her chest, which is what happens with colds in this neighbourhood in winter. They move into your chest and stay there because the chest is warm, and the room you sleep in is cold, and the body does what it can. And because one of the newer girls, a woman from a village so small it doesn't appear on any map you've seen, simply didn't come in, which is a thing that happens and which nobody explains and which results in her position being available to someone else by Wednesday. The room is long and narrow, with tables arranged in rows. At each place, the materials, the tools, the specific items you're responsible for that day. Today is roses, crimson paper, cut and pre-stamped from the rolls at the far end, brought to the tables in stacks by a boy named Victor, who is 14 and has the permanently harried look of someone whose entire job is to be in the right place at a pace that doesn't allow for error. You sit, you begin. The motion is entirely known. Your hands have done this thousands of times. The outer petal taken from the stack, the inner petal, the centerpiece, twisted, the calyx folded, the leaf, the assembly, the wire stem, the finished rose placed in the finished tray, one rose, another rose. Your hands know the work better than your mind does. Your mind can go somewhere else while your hands work, which is either an advantage or a kind of torture depending on the day. On good days it means you can think your own thoughts for 10 hours. On bad days it means there's nothing stopping the bad thoughts from running. Today is somewhere in between. You think about the meeting Gitka mentioned, the one on Canal Street, the women who have been meeting for months. You think about the strike that might come. You think about your mother's face when she told you not to go back, and you think about the specific arithmetic of your family's life. $6 plus your 48 cents plus the sewing, money equals rent plus food plus coal plus nothing left for the doctor. And you think about how that arithmetic doesn't change unless something changes the inputs. 10 hours, not 12, not 14, 10, one rose, Another rose. The room smells of paper and glue and the particular dusty warmth of 41 bodies in a space with 2 windows. The windows are shut. It's winter. The windows are almost always shut in winter because Mr. Kessler says the paper warps in the cold. Paper does warp in the cold. This is true. The other thing that is also true is that by 2 in the afternoon, the air in this room has been breathed by 41 people for 8 hours and is not, technically, air you'd choose to breathe if you had a choice. The girl across from you, her name is Sarah. She's been here longer than you. She has a husband and a baby, and she makes 1.5 gross of flowers a day because she never stops, never talks, and her hands move like something mechanical. Sarah doesn't look up. She never looks up when she's working. You've been sitting across from her for 8 months, and you know her hands better than her face. 1 rose, another rose. Outside, through the dirty glass of the factory windows, the sky goes from dark to grey to the particular flat white of a winter morning with clouds. The street sounds change as the day progresses. The early morning purposeful sounds give way to the full daytime roar. The vendors start up. The carts start. The city remembers that it's Monday. In here, the only sound is the work. At noon, there are 15 minutes. 15 minutes is the lunch break at Kessler's factory, which is 5 minutes shorter than the lunch break at the factory 2 blocks south, and 10 minutes shorter than the theoretical standard that the union organisers say should be the minimum. 15 minutes is enough to eat whatever you brought. In your case, a piece of bread and a small amount of something your mother put in a tin, which today is leftover soup, cold now, eaten cold standing near the window, because the window has been opened for these 15 minutes by an unspoken agreement that has developed over the months. Cold air or dirty air, and you take the cold. The girl from south of Minsk, whose name you don't know, is standing near you. She's eating something that smells of cabbage. Of course it smells of cabbage. Everybody's food smells of cabbage. You're beginning to think cabbage is the foundational substance of immigrant life in this city, the thing that underlies everything else. She looks at the window. You look at the window. Outside, a slice of Forsyth Street. The cobblestones, the legs of people passing, the wheels of a cart. A fragment of sky between the buildings, the same flat white it's been all morning. Cold, she says. Cold, you agree. That's the whole conversation. It's enough. The afternoon is longer than the morning. This is a physical fact, not a perception. The morning hours move at work speed, the pace set by the motion of your hands and the production targets that Mr. Kessler writes on the board in the front of the room every morning. 3 gross of roses per person by end of day, which is 432 individual flowers, which sounds like a lot until you've been doing it long enough for your hands to know the motion without thought, and then it's just the sound of your own breath, and the paper, and the faint slap of roses hitting the finished tray. But the afternoon, after the brief coldness of the window and the 15 minutes, the afternoon has a quality of stretching, like time is being asked to do more than it's designed for, like the hours from 2 to 6 are somehow wider than the hours from 7 to noon. Your back aches. This is not dramatic. It's not the ache of injury. It's the ache of sitting in the same position for too many hours on a wooden stool that was not designed with the human spine in mind. A low, persistent pressure in the small of your back that you've learned to breathe around, to sit slightly differently to accommodate, to live with the way you live with a bad shoulder. At 3, a girl 3 seats down from you, Devora. who came from Lodz and who laughs easily and often, which is either a character trait or a coping mechanism, and maybe both. Devora drops an entire stack of pre-cut petals on the floor. 250 pre-cut crimson petals, drifting to the floor like a strange red snowfall, landing under the table and between the stools and in the narrow aisle. Silence. Mr. Kessler looks up from the back of the room. Devora looks at the floor. Then she does something surprising. She starts laughing. Not the hysterical laughter of someone who is about to cry. Real laughter. The genuine absurdity of 250 paper rose petals on a factory floor, red against the grey wood. The sheer ridiculous fact of the moment. After a second, just a second, 3 other girls start laughing too, then 4, then most of the room. It's 30 seconds, maybe 40. The laughter rises and falls, and Mr. Kessler makes a sound that is not quite a laugh, but is at least not a reprimand, and Devora bends down and collects her petals, and the room goes back to the roses. 1 rose, another rose. But something is lighter for the last 2 hours. Something in the room. You think about this on the walk home. How 41 people in a cold room for 10 hours can be made lighter by one woman's genuine laughter at 250 petals on the floor. How little it takes. How much it matters. Tuesday is the public baths. You told your father you'd go. You take Rivka after the factory. She's been waiting all day. You could tell at breakfast from the way she ate faster than usual. A specific focus that Rivka gets when something is anticipated. The People's Baths on Orchard Street is a building that looks, from outside, considerably better than most of the buildings in this neighbourhood. This is intentional. The people who built it wanted it to feel like it belonged somewhere else, somewhere better, somewhere that's told the people walking in, you deserve this. You're allowed to be here. This facility is for you. It mostly works. Inside there's a receiving area with benches and a desk where a woman takes your 5 cents. 5 cents for you, 3 cents for Rivka, because she's under 12, and gives you a towel and a small piece of the proper soap, white soap, milled soap, the kind that actually lathers. The towel is white and not slightly damp. It is fully, completely, actually dry. You hold it for a moment. Rivka has already been handed hers and is running her fingers along the edge of it with the expression of someone evaluating a luxury good. It's very white, she says. It is, you say. Our towel is more grey. Our towel has had a difficult life. She considers this. Then, do you think towels have feelings? You're going to tell her no. You're going to tell her towels are objects and objects don't have feelings. And this kind of question is why she doesn't go to sleep at a reasonable hour. But you look at her face, 11 years old, serious, genuinely curious, holding her very white towel with the care of someone who takes the question of towel feeling seriously. Probably not, you say, but I think our towel has had a harder time than this one. She accepts this. The shower stall is private. Not just the door closing, not just a curtain, a door that locks, with a latch that you flip and the latch holds, and you are for the first time in a week, longer than a week, longer than you want to count, alone, completely alone. You stand there for a moment before you turn on the water, just standing in the small tiled space with the locked door and the knowledge that no one can see you and no one can hear you specifically, and you don't share this space with anyone, and nothing is required of you for the next 20 minutes except to be clean. Then you turn on the water. It comes hot, actually hot. Not warmish, not the theoretical warmth of water that was hot an hour ago. Hot water from a pipe running over your hands and your arms, and you hold your face up into it and close your eyes, and the heat hits your face and the back of your neck and the tight place between your shoulder blades that has been tight since approximately October. You stand there. The water runs. You wash your hair properly with the milled soap, working it through from root to tip, the leather white and clean smelling, nothing like the yellow lye soap from Saturday. You rinse it twice. You wash your face. You wash everything thoroughly, without rushing, without the cold air of the apartment hitting your wet skin, without the 10-minute budget. The water stays hot. You stand there and let it run over you for a full 5 minutes before you do anything else. 5 minutes of standing in hot water. You're not going to tell anyone how much this cost you in other ways, not in cents, in something else. The awareness of how simple this should be. How this, a door that locks and hot water, should not require 5 cents and a 20-minute walk and a building purpose-built because enough children died. This should just be a thing you have, a bathroom, yours, but it's not. And standing here in the hot water in the clean stall with the dry white towel on the hook, you feel both things simultaneously. The profound animal relief of the warmth, and underneath it, the precise awareness of what it means that you had to come here to get it. You think about the women who built this place, Lillian Wald and the others on Henry Street, arguing with the city for years about what basic conditions should mean. You think about the reformers and their pamphlets and their reports. You think about the meeting on Canal Street. The water runs. You're not going to cry in the shower stall at the public baths. You made that mistake once and you're not going to make it again. You wash your hair a second time, just because you can. Rivka is waiting for you in the receiving area when you come out, sitting on the bench with her hair in damp ropes around her face, glowing in the way she glowed after the washtub on Saturday, the particular luminosity of a child who has been thoroughly cleaned. How was it, you ask? Hot, she says. She pauses. Hannah. What? I stayed in for the whole time. Good. I didn't want to get out. I know. She looks at her lap. Why don't we have that? You sit down beside her. You think about what to say. The explanation that would be honest is also the explanation that is too large for the bench outside the shower stalls in the people's baths on a Tuesday afternoon. Too large for the amount of time you have. Too large maybe for a 16-year-old to give an 11-year-old and feel like she's done it right. We will, you say instead. Someday. When? I don't know. But things change. She looks at you with the expression she makes when she's deciding whether to believe something. Gitka says there might be a strike, she says. You look at her. You heard that? I hear everything, Rivka says, with the calm certainty of someone who's been listening through walls her entire life. Gitka told you in the hallway last Saturday the walls aren't thick. No, they're not. You can't tell Mama, you say. I know, she says. Not alarmed, not even particularly interested. Just filing it away, the way she files everything, in whatever internal archive she keeps. You sit together on the bench in the receiving area of the public baths, your hair damp and clean, the white towels folded on the hook behind the desk, the sound of water running behind the closed doors of the stalls. 5 more minutes, Rivka says, before we go back. 5 minutes, you agree. You sit there for 5 minutes in the warmth. Wednesday has its own logic. Wednesday is when the Educational Alliance on East Broadway runs its English class. You've been going for 4 months, on the weeks when the factory doesn't run late, which is not every week, but is most weeks, because Mr. Kessler's overtime operates by its own calendar and doesn't consult yours. The class meets at 7 in the evening. By 7 in the evening on a Wednesday, you've been awake for 13 hours and on your feet for most of them. And the walk to East Broadway requires something from you that you have to consciously decide to give. You give it every time. Because the English class is the room you're most yourself in, which is a strange thing to say about a room full of people who can barely speak the language being taught in it. But there's something about the equality of it. Everyone struggling, everyone wrong half the time, everyone arriving with a different version of the words and leaving with something slightly more shared that the factory floor doesn't have and the apartment doesn't have and even the Saturday street doesn't quite have. The teacher is a young woman named Miss Clara Levi, which might be her actual name, or might be the American version of something else, which is a question that hangs over every name in this neighbourhood. She's 23 or 24, born in New York to parents who came from somewhere in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which means she's a generation and a half ahead of you, and speaks English the way it's supposed to be spoken, and Yiddish the way it's spoken at home, and the combination of the two in a way that crosses the gap between them. She has a gift for patience. This is not a common gift. Patience that is not condescension, not performance, not the strained variety that shows at the edges when it's being maintained by effort. Real patience. The kind that means she will say the same sentence 6 times to 6 different people in 6 different ways, without anything in her voice suggesting that the repetition costs her. Tonight the lesson is on past tense, the simple kind: was, were, had, went. You went, you were, you had. I went to the factory, I was cold, I had bread for lunch. The sentences you're constructing are the sentences of your life, laid out in English like a map, the bare minimum vocabulary to describe what each day contains. I went to the factory, I was cold, I carried water, I had bread. A woman named Rivka, who came from somewhere in Romania 6 months ago, and who has the largest vocabulary in the class because she's been studying alone from a primaire every night. Rivka raises her hand. Miss Levi, how do you say... She pauses. She knows the Yiddish, she's reaching for the English shape. The thing that happens in the future that you are making happen. Not waiting. Making. Miss Levi considers. Action? Change? No. The thing when people, together, they stop. She makes a gesture, her hands flat, pressing down. They stop working. Miss Levi's face does something small and careful. A strike, she says. That's called a strike. Silence in the room. Not the silence of not understanding. The silence of a room full of people who know exactly what the word means, who have opinions about the word, who are measuring the distance between themselves and the word in terms of what they can afford to lose. A strike, Rivka says in English, trying the shape of it. We will go on strike. We will go on strike, Miss Levy confirms. Her voice is entirely neutral. 3 people in the room look at their papers. 2 people look at the door. You look at Rivka. Rivka looks at you. After class, you walk part way home with Miss Levi, who lives 2 streets north of your building and who sometimes walks the same direction. This doesn't happen every week. She has other students, other evenings, a life you know nothing about. But when it happens, you've come to value it the way you value the few things in your week that exist outside the apartment-factory apartment circuit. She's easy to talk to in a way that has nothing to do with the English. She talks to you like you're 17, which you almost are, rather than like you're someone who needs to be managed or educated or helped in the particular condescending way some of the settlement house people have. where the help comes with a slight lean, a slight distance, the posture of someone who is doing a thing for you rather than with you. Rivka's question tonight, you say, because you want to say it to someone. Miss Levy glances at you. Yes. Do you think you start again? The women at the factories, the ones meeting on Canal Street. A pause. She's choosing how much to say. I think, she says carefully, that the conditions are what they are. And I think that the conditions are what they are because of specific choices made by specific people, which means they're not fixed. They can be different. My mother says we can't afford to lose the work. Your mother is right. You look at her. She's right about that, Miss Levy says. The risk is real. Employers have fired organisers, brought in other workers. Women who went on strike have lost positions and couldn't find comparable work for months. A pause. All of that is true. But the conditions are also true, and nothing changes if nothing changes. The cold air moves between the buildings in that way it has at night, finding the gaps, finding you. You pull your coat tighter. My father says things change, you say. Do you believe him? You think about the bridge tower in the morning light, the way it looked permanent, inevitable, as if it had always been there and would always be there, and how 12 years ago it didn't exist, and before that nobody was sure it could exist, and the people who said it would collapse were wrong. Yes, you say. Good, she says. Hold on to that. She turns north at the corner. You walk the last block alone. Thursday is ordinary. This is worth saying. Because not every day is the night waking and the inspector and the public baths and the conversation in the dark hallway. Most days are ordinary. Most hours are just the work and the walking and the cold and the flowers and the table and the stove. Thursday is factory, lunch, factory, walk home, water from the hallway tap, supper, flowers, sleep. Your father's cough is quiet on Thursday. This is good. Rivka draws for 2 hours after supper and then falls asleep mid-drawing in a way that should be physically impossible, and clearly is not because she does it regularly. The pencil is still in her hand. Your mother takes it out without waking her. You do a gross and a half of flowers. The candle burns down. You sleep. Friday brings cold that announces itself before you're fully awake. The room has the quality of a room where the stove went out in the night and hasn't been restarted, which it does on nights when the coal runs low and your father judges, in his sleep or near it, that there's not enough to keep it going through the dark hours. The cold settles into the floor, the walls. Your breath makes small clouds even under the blanket. You lie still for a moment with your eyes open. Friday. End of the factory week. Tomorrow, Saturday. Bath day again. The cycle turning. The water to carry and the stove to heat and the tub to fill. Next week. Flowers. Factory. English class. The walk to East Broadway in the cold. Miss Levi's careful face when Rivka said the word strike and the room went quiet. The arithmetic of the household running in the back of your mind as it always runs. The numbers cycling. $6, 48 cents, $1.50, $9. The gap between what comes in and what goes out that is always precisely bridged, never more. The household running at the exact sustainable minimum that your mother's ledger mind maintains through the constant invisible effort of tracking every cent. You think about 5 cents. 5 cents for the shower at the public baths. 5 cents that your father said to set aside that you spent on Tuesday that made Rivka's face do that thing it did on the bench in the receiving area. You think, I should go every week. I should find the 5 cents every week. You think, we're spending 5 cents on something that should just exist. Both of these thoughts are true and neither of them solves anything. You get up. Saturday comes round again. the water, the bucket, the stairs. But this Saturday something is different. You're on your third trip up from the tap, shoulder aching, the familiar burn, the bucket heavy in your right hand, when you pass the second floor and Carmela Anastasia opens her door. She's standing there with a pot, a clean pot, scrubbed. She holds it toward you with both hands, an offering. You look at it. You look at her. She says something in Italian, and you don't understand the words, but you understand. She's offering you the pot. Her pot to carry water in, because it's wider and holds more than your bucket, which means fewer trips. The pot holds approximately 3 gallons. Your bucket holds 2. 3 gallons. Fewer trips. Less time on the stairs. You take the pot. Thank you, you say, in English. Then in Yiddish, because maybe. Danke. She makes a small gesture with her hands that means, it's nothing. It is not nothing. You both know it. You carry the water up in the wider pot. 2.5 trips instead of 4. Your shoulder still aches, but less. You return the pot to Carmela's door before you start heating. She opens the door before you knock, takes the pot, nods. On your floor, the hallway smells of cabbage and yesterday's cooking and the cold that comes in through the 4th floor window that's still not fixed. The same. Everything the same, except for the 2 trips you didn't have to make. That evening, after supper, you sit at the table with your flowers. Outside the window, the airshaft window, the grey rectangle, the building opposite has its Saturday night quality. The lights in the windows higher and more numerous than on weekdays. The sounds slightly louder, less purposeful, more human. You can see the man across the shaft, not clearly. A shape at a window, standing, possibly looking out. Possibly looking at your window. Possibly looking at nothing. 6 feet. 2 years of living 6 feet apart without once acknowledging each other. You raise your hand, not a wave, just a hand lifted, briefly. A small registration of existence. Across the shaft, after a moment, the shape raises a hand back, then goes inside. You go back to the flowers. It's late when you put down the scissors. The apartment is breathing the slow breath of sleep around you. Your father, your mother, Rivka with her arms around tonight's drawing. The candle is almost out. You have enough wick for another 10 minutes. Outside, through the airshaft, the opposite window is dark. The street below is doing its late Saturday thing, reduced but not finished. The last of the tavern noise drifting up between the buildings. You think about the meeting on Canal Street, the one in 2 weeks, the one Gitka goes to, the one your mother doesn't know about. You think about Rivka and the word strike, and Miss Levi's careful neutral face. You think about 10 hours instead of 12, windows that open, pay for overtime. You think about your father's shoulder, the one he's been guarding since October. You think about Carmela and the wider pot and the 2 trips you didn't have to make, which is such a small thing and which mattered so specifically that you keep coming back to it. Small things, the soup on the stairs, the pot at the door, the 2 cents you didn't give up, the hand raised across the air shaft, the baby breathing better, the dry white towel, Dvora's 250 petals on the floor, and the laughter that rose and fell and made the afternoon lighter. These are not solutions. None of these are solutions, but they are the texture of living through something. And living through something is different from enduring it, and the difference matters even when you can't always name what the difference is. Your hair is still slightly damp from this morning's bath. Every Saturday, the water carried up, the stove, the 10 minutes, the grey water, 4th, but clean this week and next week and the week after, for as long as you live in this room, in this building, on this street, which will be exactly as long as it takes for something to change. And something will change. You don't know when. You don't know what form it takes. But the bridge tower didn't exist 12 years ago, and now it does. And the public baths didn't exist 5 years ago, and now they do. And the nursing stations and the English classes and the women meeting on Canal Street to say, 10 hours, not 12. Windows that open. Those didn't exist either. Now they do. Something is being built. You can't see the whole shape of it from here. You're too close and it's too dark, and you're 16 years old sitting at a table in a 12 by 14 room on the 3rd floor of a building in the most overcrowded neighborhood on earth. And you're tired. But you can feel the shape of it. The way you feel the shape of a thing in the dark when you can't see it. The way you feel the presence of the building around you even with your eyes closed. The warmth of it, the life of it, all 350 people existing in their rooms, breathing, coughing, sleeping, dreaming. Something is being built. The candle goes out. The room settles into its nighttime dark. The soft grey that isn't quite black, because the city outside never completely gives up its light. The orange glow of the gaslights rising up the air shaft, the faint reflection off the clouds. You lie down. The blanket, the mattress. Rivka's warmth against your side. Your hands smell of paper and glue and the last of the yellow soap. Your hair is clean. You're warm enough, fed enough, here enough. The building breathes. 350 lives going on in their rooms, each one contained in its small space, each one carrying its own weight of water and calculation and hope, each one part of the same vast, improbable fact of this city in this year. The city that is too big and too cold and too expensive and too crowded and too loud, and that is also, undeniably, building something, even if you can't see it yet, even if the water pressure is still bad, even if the railing on the 2nd floor is still not fixed. Even so, sleep comes easily tonight, the way it comes after a week of hard work and cold mornings and not quite enough of anything. It comes like water finding its level, without drama, without ceremony, just arriving and taking what's been waiting for it. Your thoughts slow. The flowers for tomorrow, tomorrow's problem, the meeting on Canal Street. 2 weeks from now, your father's shoulder, something to watch, the wider pot at Carmela's door. Small things. Let them all be still for now. Let them wait in the dark where tomorrow will find them. You've carried 8 gallons of water up 3 flights of stairs today. Same as last Saturday. Same as the Saturday before. You've made your flowers. You've walked your streets. You've stood in a factory for 10 hours and held your own in a negotiation over 2 cents and brought soup to a woman on the floor below and raised your hand to a stranger across an air shaft. You've been here. That's not nothing. In this city that eats so many people whole, that grinds the arriving ones down, that takes the labour and leaves the bodies, that charges $9 a month for 12 by 14 and a tap that drips. In this city, being here and staying here and remaining yourself while you're here is its own kind of work. You've done it today. You'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be water to carry. Tomorrow there will be flowers. Tomorrow the stove will need coal and the shoulder will ache, and the arithmetic will run in the back of your mind with its permanent, careful precision. But that's tomorrow. Right now, tonight, the blanket is warm, and Rivka is warm, and the building breathes its 108-person breath around you, and your hair is clean, and the candle is out, and the street below is quiet enough. You are Hannah Blum. You're 16 years old. You came from a village outside Krakow with your family in the autumn of 1893, and you have been carrying water upstairs in this building for 2 years, and you have green dye in your knuckles and a bad shoulder, and 48 cents a week, and the English for strike, and past tense, and the sensation of hot water from a pipe, and the knowledge of how to get 2 cents from a woman who didn't want to give them. You are becoming someone. You can feel it the way you feel the building structure in the dark. Present, solid, still taking shape. Let sleep take you the way it takes everyone in this building tonight. The tired and the worried, and the ones who didn't make rent this week, and the ones whose babies are finally breathing, and the ones who are dreaming in languages that have no translation, and the ones who have stopped dreaming of anywhere else. Let the sounds of Orchard Street settle around you. The last cart, distant. A dog. Someone calling up to a window in a voice too quiet to make out the words. Let the sounds become the river they become when you're almost asleep. Not separate things anymore, but one continuous texture. The sound of a city at rest, which is not quiet, but is somehow peaceful, which is not safe, but is somehow home. You've earned this, the darkness, the warmth, the clean hair, the rest. Take it. Good night.